You're ready.
Go ahead.
All right, excellent. So welcome everybody. This is the final session of our igNIGHT Artist Spotlight sessions. My name is Teresa Fuller and I'm a coordinator with the Culture and Social Development branch of Community Services within the Regional Municipality of Wood Buffalo. And I'm excited to be your host this afternoon. But before we begin, I'd just like to recognize that here within the region of Wood Buffalo, we are located on Treaty 8 land, which is the traditional territories of the Cree, Dene, and Métis people. It's also the traditional meeting grounds of many Indigenous people since time immemorial. So as we continue to recognize our past, understand our present, and look forward to future relationships with First Nations, Inuit, and the Métis people of Canada, it's our shared responsibility, globally, it's our shared responsibility to respect these lands, to preserve these waters, and to nourish our relationships with our surrounding environment and with each other here today. So before I introduce our brilliant artist duo, just want to go over a couple of details as far as this virtual session is considered. So we are recording. So this is an act of transparency and as a form of record keeping. Once, if you are not interested in having your face appear, please do not, I guess, press whatever that is. That is. Anyways, you're more than welcome, but you're more than welcome to, of course, let your face appear because we love to talk to you and we love to have that open exchange of conversation. But you will notice that your audio device is muted for the presentation portion of today's event. And this is intentional so that the speaker can share with you uninterrupted. And Kevin and Jamie are more than welcome to ask our moderators to remove this feature if you do want to have that open discussion. Okay. If there are questions throughout this presentation, feel free to also enter them in the chat portion. We will be checking that regularly. And of course, these virtual events, I mean, as much as we can prepare for them, we always ask your patience in the event that something goes wrong, as it can, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Finally, art is a form of expression, and we'd like to offer a safe space for everybody to engage. So with that, no disrespectful behavior will be tolerated and you will be removed. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to our wonderful artist duo here. We have Jamie Mason and Kevin Chow, also known as Rawry and Pohly, who will be sharing some information about you for, becoming an artist and moving into the world of entrepreneurship. Very exciting stuff. And take it away.
Thank you so much, Teresa. So I'm here in Wood Buffalo at the Municipal Library right now. An excellent location if you're an entrepreneur artist. If you just want to get away from your house, every major city has a library. I encourage you to take advantage of the resources and space that's available. There's countless books and magazines that have amazing inspirational topics. So just wanted to do a nice shout out for the amazing library here. And then Jamie over in Calgary can introduce herself with Kiwi.
Hi, I'm sorry, my birds might be a little loud. My name is Jamie Mason, and I'm just going to give a little brief history about myself. I have a degree in education and a degree in English and a minor in history. And I know both of us have been doing art since a very young age, but I was never formally trained in art, but Kevin did have some formal training. And I used to work for the Regina Downtown Business Improvement District as a project coordinator, and that really influenced how we became entrepreneurs and how we shaped our art in certain ways. So as we go along, I will add more information about that.
Thanks, Jamie. So as she mentioned, I was formally trained in the arts. So after high school, I actually did go to Sheridan College for art fundamentals and then animation. But then I quickly bounced back and forth between business school. I just had a little bit of interest in all these different fields and I really wanted to go back and forth. So I ended up getting my Bachelor of Arts in Marketing and my diploma in marketing from University of Regina. And then we started painting for fun, actually. And that's where our journey begins. I met Jamie at university, and we started dating, and we started painting on the side while we were taking classes. And then after we graduated, we kept on doing painting. We worked in our day jobs. And that really is the beginning of our entrepreneurial journey. So starting small and just kind of doing things for fun, devoting time outside of your daily schedule of work or school, and seeing how that grows. It's very important to not overextend yourself when you're first beginning. As an artist or an entrepreneur, testing the waters is one of the safest ways of doing it, especially if you can put aside some money from your day job to reinvest in your ambitions. So I guess one of the first things I want to ask in a poll now is to see, where are the people here today? Where are you in as an artist or an entrepreneur, or if you're just interested, what stage are you beginner, intermediate, or advanced? You know how to shape everything. So in the comments section, you guys will see a little vote you can do. There's 3 categories. So again, beginner, you're interested, you haven't started yet. Intermediate is you already are doing it part-time, and advanced is like, I'm committed. This is my full-time thing. If I'm selling art, if I'm selling plumbing as a service, like if you're a plumber, like it really doesn't matter what you're talking, where you are. Just want to get a good understanding of where I can focus all my talks on here today. Okay. So it looks like everyone here, for the most part, are beginners, to the exception of 2 or 3, which are intermediate. Perfect. All right. So I guess we're going to focus a lot of our beginnings then. So that is key. So starting small, in the sense that you can, work after hours is really important, and also the space. So if you are an artist or an entrepreneur, so if you're not selling art, for example. If you can, I have another poll ready to go. I just want to see if we're talking to artists today or if we're talking to entrepreneurs in a different field. So we're going to quickly drop that in, see if you're an artist or an entrepreneur. And if you are an entrepreneur, just please type in the comments what you are doing so I can shape some of those examples to your industry specifically. Ooh, 3D artists. Advanced, my vote won't submit. Okay, Marissa. So we'll go with option 1 being artist and option 2 being an entrepreneur. Artist. So Ryan, I already know you're a personal trainer, so I'm sure we'll connect after as well. So a lot of artists. Okay, perfect. This is gonna be great because all of our journeys are gonna be directly relevant then. So when we started, we didn't know how to paint canvases efficiently. And that's kind of where we began. We painted canvases of icons of our youth, so Pokemon characters, other cartoons that we always liked as children and as adults. So in the summer, we would paint in our basements. We would go to Dollarama, buy the canvases for $1.25, buy the little paints, and then mix them. And I can tell you all about that. Eventually we got to the point where we were buying all of the canvases before they unboxed the boxes of the inventory, and we had good relationships with the managers as we were scaling up. So looking at the supply side of your artistry is very important. Don't be ashamed if you're using Dollarama or anything like that. You don't need to use the most expensive oil paints, which you are kind of introduced to in most art schools. At this point, you're looking to be efficient and cost savings in your supplies. So that way you can provide a better price point to your end customer, so they're more likely to buy your art. So again, a little bit of numbers there. So Dollarama is where we went to for everything. People would gift us Dollarama cards for Christmas and birthdays because they knew that's where we went all the time. But then eventually we started networking with other artists in the university. So there was a fine art program at the U of R. And this leads to another point: always be networking. Even if it's other artists, other entrepreneurs, expand your network of mentors and peers, because you never know where those relationships can take you. And that mantra is so important, and it helped us get to where we are today. So eventually we needed more space. after we were painting in university. So in the summertime, when classes aren't as busy, we found that at the U of R, you could rent studio spaces as students, or if you were the general public or alumni, in the space if it was a service available for you to use. So you could be messy in there, you could have canvases lining up against the walls and drying, and that's literally what we had. And in that discussion, in that space, someone introduced us to the world of screen printing, because up to that point, we would use overhead projectors to put this image on the wall of a canvas, and then we would trace it. And after an 8-hour shift, right here, these muscles would just destroy us, because I don't know, if you could just hold your hand like this and try to get different angles again and again and again, but it worked. It made sense at the time. It was a means to an end. So always be looking to find more efficient and creative ways to do what you're doing. There's no textbook example. So after we learned that screen printing was a thing, we did some Googling. We found that we were lucky enough to have a co-op artist space called Articulate Inc. in Regina, Saskatchewan. And it was a space where screen printing was set up in a studio, and you could rent a monthly membership, and then you could come and use the space, the equipment, clean up, and then do your own thing. And this gave us a huge opportunity to do things in a way we've never had seen before. So looking for co-op spaces, I know in Fort McMurray there's not a lot, but in the bigger cities, there's definitely a co-op for screen printing in almost every major city. I've visited the ones in Toronto, Edmonton has one, Calgary has one called Burnt Toast. Try to find out where there's a space you can do your work that doesn't require you buying all the equipment. It's like if you want to go to a gym, you don't buy every single equipment. Like you go and pay the monthly membership, is more affordable. And as you become more serious, if you want to invest in that kind of thing like we have now, you can. But again, start humble, start small. And so in Articulate Inc., we would find we would end up using the space more than the average user. So to not step on any toes, we would always go after they closed. So imagine after 5 p.m., we'd go home, have supper. Around 7, 8, when the studio was closed, there you go, JVP. We would work until 4 a.m. sometimes, 5 a.m., especially if it was the weekends. We really saw potential in what we were doing, so we were willing to commit the hours. That's not something that most people can do. If you have children, if you have other family obligations, if you have another job, it's extremely difficult to find that kind of energy and time and mental space to be in a position where you can just work hard. We were just lucky that we were in this perfect storm of situations where we could do that. So that's how we started to scale at a rate that we couldn't have done in our home or at the university in a private studio. The special equipment that we started experimenting with really helped innovate our processes so that we could be more efficient and able to make more inventory without having to charge more money. And we could do it all ourselves. So we didn't have to kind of hire additional staff. So the co-op space was tremendous. Eventually we outgrew the space and we rented another studio. And then in that studio, we started buying the equipment we needed, doing the research. Again, in that co-op space, we were able to ask the questions, what kind of equipment, what kind of chemicals do we need? What kind of special drainage do we need for said chemicals? It really becomes an entire logistical nightmare that is very difficult if you aren't introduced slowly into that world. Jamie, do you have anything else to add on that?
I'd probably just talk a little briefly about our initial beginnings. So when we first started, we wanted to see if this was going to actually become a business first. So what we did initially was we found out that some people liked our art and they had requested our art from us and commissioned us on a small scale in the beginning. So the first set of canvases was actually, I asked Kevin to make me some art for our wall at home. And he made those for me. And then we realized that, number one, we're getting a lot of compliments on that art and a lot of people liked it and our friends liked it. And we had a few requests to make more. So when we realized that we had these requests, we decided that, well, there was we identified the Fan Expo, or not a Fan Expo, it was the Saskatoon Blitz, actually. That was the first one, wasn't it? The Blitz, yeah, in Saskatoon. So there was a small art show in Saskatoon that was like a Comic-Con anime-thon or anime convention. I believe that one was an anime convention specifically. So when you're first starting out and you realize you want to make something, one of the most important things to do when you're beginning is start identifying, if you want to sell that, where you're going to sell it and who would be the most receptive to it. So not every sales opportunity is going to be the people who would want to buy from you. So if you're going to bring, well, actually, here's a good example. We went to Farm Progress one year and we decided we were going to make a bunch of farm animals, and we made some combines and a tractor, and we did a bunch of canvases related to farming, and then some boxes and stuff. So we brought this to Farm Progress, and they did not do well there. Not at all.
I sold one canvas at the end of the weekend. Now this convention was
probably the worst sales-wise we've ever done. And we were very confused because we thought, we're bringing fun farm art to farmers. But the interesting thing that happened afterwards was we brought these canvases to conventions and anime shows, and they sold way better there to people who were involved in farming, or people who enjoyed the idea of farming. I'm sorry about my birds in the background. So sometimes identifying your audience can be difficult, but if you're going for, we make a lot of pop culture artwork and paint a lot of pop culture items that go with anime conventions or comic conventions. So for us, it was identifying where was our market. And at that time, our first step was that small convention in Saskatoon and just testing the waters. So what we did with that was, I think that was when we were renting the university space. Yeah, so we started realizing we were going to make these canvases and we needed a space to do it. So we found out about that university rental space, I think, from some friends who are in the art program. And that's also why it's really important to network with people, especially in your field, but also in adjacent fields. Like an example of this would be when you're doing art, you don't always think, well, maybe I should network with people at the city who work for the municipality or who work for, the city of Calgary. But that would actually be very important because the more that you can learn about what they're doing and how to follow city ordinances or get permits, the more you realize, you can do art in these spaces. And if you know how to do art in these spaces, you can apply for more projects and do more projects. But understanding how to do it is a huge part of it. So networking, very, very important. I'm not saying, be fake to people. Like I'm saying, just have conversations with people you like, learn about what they do. That kind of thing. I'm going to pass it back to Kevin because I'm going to put the birds away. I'll just give you a second.
Thanks, Jamie. So what she's mentioning is very important. Again, we're coming back to the point of networking and the opportunities that it really kind of grows. And she brings up an important point, don't be fake. So another way of seeing that is be yourself. If you're eccentric, if you have a little bit of ADHD, if you're an introvert and you're a little quiet, act the way you act. Don't try to go in selling something. Go there, have a conversation. What are you doing in your city? What do you do again and again? And if there's an opportunity for you to pitch something in the future, and you know how to now formally present an idea cohesively so they understand, It's one thing to say, I do cartoons, and oh, you're doing a festival, let me do cartoons in said festival. It's another to kind of showcase where you've gone with your artistic practice and where you want to go. And even then, networking involves identifying how are you physically going to make the product, how are you going to deliver it, transportation, very important logistics. Trial and error is a great way of doing it. For those beginners now, we did mention Comic-Cons and small anime shows. So at those small trade shows, even craft fairs and Christmas shows, you can rent a small table for about $400 to $500, and it gives you a chance to sell whatever you want to sell on a 6-foot table. If you are looking for more ideas,
here, some of the
Mhm.
smaller ones are usually, $50 to $150. So $400 to
Okay.
$500 might be actually like a medium to large size one. Smaller craft shows won't cost that much unless they have they'd have to have a huge audience to be over $150 for a table.
Mhm. Thank you, Jamie. Sorry, my numbers are often skewed to the kind of booths that we are always targeting. And that's a whole nother conversation. But the first step is to find, if you aren't someone who can do this independently, find parents, partners, anyone to help you bring to space. Networking is huge because now you can share on hotel costs or Airbnbs. Again, looking for opportunities to not spend all that money. And the point when you're first starting off isn't so much to make as much money as you can, is to see, is this something you enjoy? Do you enjoy sitting for 10 hours behind a table, engaging with people as they walk by your booth? Do you see opportunities in networking with the artist sitting beside you across the table and just saying, hey, what do you do? How long have you been doing this? Where are you from? Why do you do the art style you have? Why do you focus on this specific genre or this subject matter? It's so rewarding when you see these different walks of life together in a single space selling their wares. And go
I
ahead.
just want to mention here too is we talk a lot about in-person sales because that a large amount of our business was in-person sales that we did with our collective. But there are quite a few options for doing, art as an entrepreneur. Like there are a lot more print-on-demand websites that are great these days. You can look for gallery representation. For gallery representation specifically, the networking element is huge. So you definitely need to, be getting to know the gallery, be attending the gallery, see what they need. A lot of times actually with art, you are still addressing a need. It's very similar to any other area of business where when you're selling a product, you're kind of addressing some kind of need. But this is more of an emotional need or an ideological need than a physical need. Like it might not be like a scrub brush, but it is something that people still do need in their lives. But it depends on what you do with your art too, because maybe you want to put your art on a scrub brush and you're hitting two needs at once. But there's lots of options for how you go about selling your art, and identifying what direction you want to go in can be fairly difficult. But it's a matter of what are you good at, what do you feel comfortable with, or what do you want to learn? Because you're not necessarily good at it when you start, and you're not necessarily knowledgeable about it when you start. But taking that time of YouTube has a ton of resources now that are fantastic. TikTok has a bunch of great resources now that are fantastic. So if you're looking to learn things, definitely engage in those ways, and try and engage with the person who's putting up the content, because the person putting up the content teaching you is also an artist, and leaving comments or liking or sharing their stuff, they do appreciate that. And I'm telling you right now, no matter how big an artist seems, they're always going to appreciate a compliment or really appreciate a share. They really live off of those kind of things a lot of the time, both literally and figuratively. But definitely take your time to do some research, but don't feel so scared that you don't start. That's a really important part about doing anything entrepreneurial. Is what can really prevent you from beginning is just that fear of failure. But you have to let yourself fail. So in the beginning, you just want to let yourself fail small. So if you do fail, it's only a $50 table, or it's only time, or, whatever. You're still learning. You're still going to be able to, pick up and move along as you go, and definitely always be learning. But it's really, really important. Don't let fear stop you from beginning.
And people will be questioning you and asking, for example, oh, you sell art, you can't do that full time. Why would you do that? We are very lucky that we had family and friends who supported us throughout the entire journey. So you will have people doubting in the back of your mind. You're just like, oh, maybe I should just keep on doing my day job. It's safe. But this makes me feel alive, this idea of being an artist. So you just have to commit to that a little bit. Jamie did bring up a lot of points. That fear of starting, I can't emphasize how big that is, even for us at this stage. For us to consider international sales, for us to consider doing public art. Our first mural was done last year, and we've been doing this for 5 years, 6 years now. It was a daunting journey, but we knew we had a vision that we wanted to do art in the public realm, so we had to start somewhere. From our networking, we've met a lot of business owners who own restaurants and whatnot, and someone gave us an opportunity to paint on a wall in Niagara Falls. And once we completed that project, we were able to show the world, hey, we can paint on something this big. We can follow a schedule. We understand the logistics of the medium of working with outdoor paints, and every package we can do. And from there, we've worked with a small community in Crescent Heights in Calgary, painted a mural called Dance. Diversity of dance. Yeah, if you can't fly, dance. So it showed us an opportunity to be more creative. And now we are looking at a gigantic mural, one of the bigger ones in Calgary. And so we're still working with the city on that. And it's just crazy how fast we were able to move when we can show that we are professional about the side of being art. And it's not just the way we speak, it's what we've already accomplished. And it was scary every single step of the way. It's like, I'm on a ladder painting, what? Where's my small canvas in my studio that I'm comfortable with? I'm in the heat, ugh, what is this world that I'm in, the summertime painting? But it's a journey, and that's what makes it so exciting. For us, we've positioned the idea of failure as long as our failures don't stop us from doing what we want to do. For example, we exhaust our entire bank account, or we hurt ourselves in a way that we can't recover from. Failures are part of the process. If someone gives you a negative review online, you learn from that. If your hotel cancels on you and now you're in a new city and you have to find a new spot on Airbnb, and I've done this time and time again, you can accommodate having your stuff shipped to another city in Toronto, for example, and you arrive and it's not there yet. What do? Right? You go to FedEx and you use their printing, and then you get them to print your art, and then you can just continue on. It's not the best, but you got to be quick with identifying how to think on your feet. As an entrepreneur, there is no input that you can give that guarantees success. And it's like baking, if you will. You put in this ingredients, this portion, you put in this amount of time, and turn the oven to this degree, you're guaranteed an end result for the most part. In entrepreneurship, that temperature will fluctuate. There's no control. There's a barometer of guessing. Your measuring cup is going to always morph into different sizes as you're using it. And you just have to kind of, okay, this, move things around. You have to be okay with that in entrepreneurship. And it's scary. So another question I have in terms of a poll is, for those of you who are here today, are you doing this independently, or do you have a team? So a partner, are you a collective? I'm kind of curious to know, do you have more than one person helping you on this journey as being an artist or an entrepreneur? So we'll have a poll come up here that will ask that. And when that comes up, Ryan has a couple people, that's great. It's always important to have more than one person helping you. We could not do what we're doing if I didn't have Jamie, 100%. It's like she mentioned, she is the organized person. I am the crazy creative mind that would sink myself in all my ideas had I not have a little bit of structure. It's okay to start by yourself. It's exciting, but as you grow, look for opportunities to kind of work with more people. Even if it's not on a partnership level, if someone can help you do a show in another city. Oh, I know a number of young artists that kind of, they will hire someone that they met over the years to manage their booth, and then just send their inventory over, and it's just peace of mind. For us, it's extremely difficult to even consider hiring at this point because we've never needed to, but now we're growing to the place where it's a very real option. But because we're two people already, I can be in Wood Buffalo doing a light festival, and Jamie can be home taking care of birds. So Sue K mentions, while I have chosen solo, I keep having people say to me that I should sell my art. That is a very exciting idea, because there's so many opportunities to sell your art. Again, we've been talking about those in-person trade shows and art fairs. Etsy is an online platform that is extremely accessible and not hard to figure out if you know how to take pictures of your products. A lot of people will say, when it comes to Etsy, I don't like their rates, they're not as competitive, I don't like the idea of giving 1.5% of my sales. Just do it. At this point, it's an idea of learning. You can always move outside of Etsy. For us, we have Etsy. We sell our art on Etsy. It allows us to hit demographics in the States, in Japan, in Switzerland. People will message us from Germany and say, hey, I just discovered you. What is this? Do you mail to Germany? And then we're like, oh no, we haven't figured out shipping rates yet. And then so when we started selling, we ended up losing money because our shipping we didn't know how to do it. Again, part of the learning experience. You have to start somewhere. Etsy has a bunch of great tutorials on how to do this online, and I would highly suggest you look at any platform. Amazon has a platform which you can sell your crafts. It's different, but I start with one platform before moving to the next. And while we're on a topic of sales, Jamie, did you have something?
Yeah. So if you're looking at selling online, he's mentioning Etsy a lot just because that's what we use predominantly, but it has changed a lot over the years. I would say definitely look at all the different sales platforms and then measure them against each other and decide which is best for you. Some have natural traffic and some don't. They require you to do more marketing solo, and some have higher percentages and some have lower percentages. So you're definitely going to have to look at each one and see which one works for you best.
Now, Marissa brings up a very interesting topic. Do you have licenses for your characters, specifically the Pokemon? Right now, we are looking to develop those relationships with those IP, and IP means intellectual property. So I'm going to say copyright as IP. So we're looking at developing those relationships. But in the interim, there's a number of things you have to be extremely cognizant of. Something called trademark. Now, trademark, if you're doing fan art like we are approaching, you cannot use their official names at any capacity. So you cannot say, I'm doing Mickey Mouse, for example. You can't do that because by law, they have to reinforce that trademark. So if you tag, if you name your pieces online in any kind of official capacity, they have to, in order to protect themselves, tell you stop doing that. So that's trademark. So first off, never name the inspirational characters that you choose by their official names unless you have the IP rights. Second off, how you approach art, like what's fair use is something that's always discussed. It's a gray area. There is no established consensus on this. But in Canada, there's two main criteria which really does help you to consider, are you doing art or are you just pumping out 100 t-shirts and just kind of benefiting off that IP without giving back? And the two categories in copyright world in Canada is it transformative and is it a parody? If you can hit those 2 points, you do fall under the gray area of fair use. And this isn't a sure thing. For example, if the IP holders were to approach and say, hey, we would like for you to discontinue what you're doing, we would have to respect that. Because at that point, they've considered us working with us, and that we're at that point yet. So that's another ballgame. So transformative isn't more so just put a different hat on that character and call it as is. You really have to redefine how that character is visually represented. So you have to have an understanding that you can't just do that character, that IP in a way that they already do. You have to really add an artistic interpretation to it. And then parody is a very vague meaning as well. I kind of have seen it as identify what this IP means, how they present it. Is there a way to parody it? For example, with that yellow mouse, everyone knows as Pikachu. He is always talking. He's always active. We chose not to give him a mouth. We chose to completely change the way he's represented. So we are taking the image and the personality, if you will, of the IP and poking fun at the idea, if this was their full-time job to be this ferocious dragon, what is their inner child, right? So we make art for the inner child. We want to represent these characters in a very unique, fun way that is imaginative. And we have a unique art style, which we completely radicalize the way it's represented. But again, it's such a gray area.
Yeah, I would like to.
It's so gray. It's so gray.
We cannot give any recommendations.
I can't give any solid recommendations, but if you do your research, like we have, you can find a voice in that space, but be very respectful for those who have any concerns that own the IP. If you want to work with them in an official capacity, you have to show that you've worked with smaller IPs first. So you can't work with Disney before you work with Barney the Purple Dinosaur, for example, someone who isn't as established.
That'll depend on your networking.
Yeah. But networking, again, your business acumen.
We should just probably move off this topic because we can't really give advice on it.
Yeah. So one more thing I want to talk about is branding itself. Who are you, the artist? What is your name? Why is it your name? So when we first started, we were multiple nerdgasms, and I'm going to type that in so you guys understand how silly it was. Gasms. We all know where that was going. We were having fun, but then eventually when we wanted to do this more full time, I Googled that and I got some really interesting results. So I realized quickly we couldn't build a future off of this. So we looked at why were we doing this? Why were we ambitious to quit everything, throw everything away, and just kind of do this full time? So we identified it was something of our personalities. We really enjoyed being this youthful duo and doing fun cartoons. The way we acted with other people were who we always were and who we want to continue to be. So we looked at our teddy bears, Rawry and Pohly. So when we first started dating, I had Pohly, and this was the bear I was given to when I was born, and I was just the kind of person who never put him in the attic. I brought him everywhere, university, if I go travel. He's actually in my Airbnb right now in Wood Buffalo. And then, so when I started dating Jamie, we had this 45-minute long distance commute, and she would say, "Can I hold on to Pohly?" And of course I said, "Yeah, I'm sure. I'm dating you for the first time. This is fun." But eventually it was like, "Oh, I kind of want my teddy bear back." So I gave her an exact same model, and we named him Rawry. And so that just sat in the back of our world for the longest time. And so when we decided to rename ourselves, and that's another thing, you can always rebrand, especially if you think there's an opportunity to tell your story more efficiently with a message. And so we wanted to go for Rawry and Pohly. The name meant nothing to nobody, but we felt that if we were consistent in who we are, and we just showed people why we do what we do, they can understand how that came together. So now Rawry and Pohly means more than just names. Once you figure out that it's actually part of their teddy bears, something, if you just met Kevin in another city, there's a good chance that teddy bear is in his hotel or Airbnb right now. And that's a sense of who you are. And it's okay to be Kevin Chow, the artist. And now you're looking at Kevin Chow's art. But we felt that we really wanted to communicate something beyond ourselves. And I think that we thought the best way of doing that was something representative of who we were. And our teddy bears was the most vulnerable and honest way of saying that. So take into consideration your brand. A lot of people will fall in love with your art. That's one thing. But if they can fall in love with who you are and why you're doing it as well, then you're building a strong foundation. It's not going to be easy to do. You're going to have a whole sketchbook of ideas on what that will look like for you specifically. But I highly encourage you to do it. I have a couple of friends who have some really fun names. But I'm always poking at them, hey, when are you going to consider something more? Because you have so much potential. Your artwork's amazing. You have amazing sales already. But what's the next level, right? And they know that's the kind of person I am, always looking at the business side of things. So it's fun to have those discussions candidly with people that I know a lot. Jamie, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I wanted to add a brief note about branding as an artist specifically. So what's interesting about being an artist is you are going to eventually have a style, and people are going to expect certain things from your brand and from that style. And they don't want it to go too far from what it is. So eventually, like when you start out, you're probably going to be doing a lot of different kinds of styles. You're going to be trying to find your style or find your voice. And at some points you will find it. Like, you know, people will be very receptive to this kind of art or that kind of art, or they'll really, really like this style that you did once. And doing more of that and seeing how that goes, seeing how, if they're continually receptive to it, will eventually define what kind of style and what you're going to continue doing as an artist, and what that's going to look like. That being said, it can be a double-edged sword. So if you do end up finding a style that you're really good at, like I noticed this happened with Strange Planet with Nathan Pyle, who makes those alien comics. He made very, very different comics before he started making the alien comics. But the alien comics, they really shot off. They're really popular. And he continually made those because they were the style that people were really liking, even though he already had a large fan base beforehand. And when he posts his older comics, sometimes people are not very receptive to them because they just want the alien comics. And that is something that will happen in art, that as you go along, you will kind of almost pigeonhole yourself into a style, which is fun. You can always create, if you want to experiment with things, you can create side brands, you can create side names and side businesses to do that with, if you don't want to, you know, give too much of something different to your current fan base, because they will not always be receptive to change. Mm-hmm. But it's really important to work at finding that for yourself. What is that voice? What is your niche? And I would, in that search, consider, you know, what are you really passionate about? What kind of styles do you really like? Like, look at your top 3 favorite art styles and try and just mesh them all together into a new thing, and add your take on it, you know, and see what that looks like. And when you're beginning, really spend time on practicing your craft and learning how to do that really well. Like, you don't have to be the best artist ever to start selling your art. You should start selling your art as soon as you can. And people like to see a development in the art. They like to see it, you know, if it's starting and you're not as good at drawing heads and now you're getting way better, people are going to enjoy that journey anyways. So don't be too concerned about starting when you're the best of the best. Like, you can get there over time. You can get better at selling over time. Again, I go back to my point of don't be afraid. But make sure to definitely spend time getting better, you know, do a lot of drawing, do a lot of painting. When we first started painting, it was like some of the first times we had ever painted. And we were just really learning, and we took what we already knew how to do, things like, you know, using a Sharpie marker. We knew how to use Sharpie markers because that wasn't super related to painting. So we kind of cheated that way. And in the beginning, we were painting backgrounds and then using Sharpie marker and painting, and then using Sharpie marker, and it looked good in the end. But looking back at it now, I'm like, oh, it looks so different from what we do now. I still like it though. It feels very rough. And I think that there is something to be said about art that is rough. I think that art that's rough is very enjoyable art. And I like a lot of art that is, you know, you can tell the technique isn't all there, but there's that passion, and there's that really just somebody tried really hard to make this interesting or new or different. And that also works really well. So don't be afraid to grow as an artist while you're an entrepreneur.
And the best part is, as an entrepreneur, you're doing those small trade shows or you're doing sales online, you're figuring out the business of being an artist, which is what this talk is all about. And as your style progresses, you can put it out there faster, more efficiently, because you have an understanding what's the best way to introduce the world to your art. Art's so unique that it's pretty much an artist's reinterpretation of what is always considered the way it has always been, right? If someone paints me a tree, that can mean so many different things, right? They may come from different backgrounds, have cultural influences, and that tree at the end of the day is going to look so different. And that's what I'm looking for as a consumer, even as an artist. I want to be excited about that. But even if you do the most amazing tree painting, if you don't know how to introduce it to the world, if you don't know marketing, if you haven't familiarized yourself with art fairs or online sales, it's just living in this room that you live in. You got to go outside of it to share your vision with the rest of the world. And that's the most important thing, not being scared. And by focusing on all the things we've talked about, it kind of helps get you there. So if anything, at the end of this conversation, know that it's okay to be scared. It's kind of the fuel of our ambitions. It keeps us awake at night, but it also keeps us of a sense of purpose. It would be too easy and it would be really boring if we just ran this business on cheat mode at whatever we made, we instantly sold out and we didn't have to worry about money. I mean, no, that's not fun. Now I'm just pushing a button and then in life, and I just kind of, what else am I going to do with my time? I love making mistakes. One example is when we started doing screen printing, I found this screen printing machine that did a lot of work for us, like 4 provinces over. And we found it online because we were always looking for opportunities for those kind of machines. And I dropped $5,000 on it and got it shipped over here. And we haven't used it once because we used it and it didn't work out. I'm like, oh, this isn't what we thought it would be. So now it's sitting in our garage and it's just there. Mistakes.
Make a note about the machine though, is that we gave up on it too easily. I think that if we had tried a little harder, we could have made it work. But we do everything by hand currently, and we did kind of decide that, well, doing it by hand was just fine. We did like doing it by hand. But that reminds me of when we started screen printing. So I'm going to briefly tell that story. When we started painting, we were fairly new to painting, but we weren't unknown to painting. When we started screen printing, we were entirely new field, no idea how to do it. I just knew that this would make everything we did faster and more interesting, and like it was still a handmade process, and I really, really liked the idea of it. And when we initially started, so the thing about screen printing is you would think it would be easy, like a machine. You just, pull some ink across the screen and then it'll do all the work for you. But it's actually a very fine art. So when we first started doing screen printing, we struggled for years. It was difficult. It was, if you pull even a little bit too hard, it's ink everywhere, too light, you have almost no ink. Things weren't coming out right. And we really wanted to do this mixed medium of painting and screen printing and hand done and hand painting, and it was just a struggle. And I remember at one point Kevin got very, very fed up when we were like the first day or the second day we were doing it, and he said, "This is so much harder. We're never going to be able to do it. It's way easier to do this with just my hand and a Sharpie." And I said, "That's true. Right now it is easier to do it by hand with a Sharpie for us. But one day this will be so much easier and so much faster, and we won't get arthritis as quickly or carpal tunnel as quickly," which Kevin did end up temporarily getting carpal tunnel. So we had to find a way to make things not as hard on our bodies. And I think that that's a big thing too, is understanding the limits of what you can do, but also know, like, when you're learning something new and you're trying something new and it's going to make things easier, have patience with yourself and have patience with that new skill that you're trying to learn. It does take a lot of time. A lot of things are not a lot of people think there's this one thing that's going to solve all the problems. Like if you just had this, and then it'd make everything faster and easier, and it would just solve all of the issues. But it actually just makes you have new issues. So when you're addressing problems, understand that, you know, things will get better and easier, and other things will get harder and more difficult. And you just have to be patient with yourself and take your time. And don't give up on something too quickly. I don't know what the sweet spot is for giving up on something too quickly and having tried hard enough and long enough that it's time. But I would say you might be the best or the most knowledgeable for what that is for you. But just make sure that if you need to seek help, like when we first were learning screen printing, we were learning from some people who knew how to do it. So we could ask them further questions and say, I'm really bad. Like, what am I doing wrong? And this and this and this. And that's another thing back to networking and knowing people to ask for help. And if after all of that fails and nothing is still going well, then maybe it's time to try a different solution. But I think a big thing is when there's problems popping up and you have to learn a new skill to address it, do try and do that, and approach that in a way that it won't be the quickest, easiest answer. It might take time, but definitely do it.
Very important idea of the endurance factor of being an artist or entrepreneur. Things aren't going to work out. But if you know that by doing it this way, it's going to be more challenging. But if you can master it a little bit better, you're going to be better off in the long run. 100% worth it. Because like I said, there is no machine you can just buy that solves all your problem. There's never that. That doesn't exist. If you did, everyone would be doing what you're doing and everyone would be okay in life and just be very happy. A lot more things that we employed at the time and still employ are very MacGyver-y. Like we just kind of pieced it together. Duct tape, cuts of wood, assembled to make this kind of offshoot of a jig that we can use so we can align things easier. I mean, oh my God, we love duct tape. It is we use it every day in our studio because it allows us to do things that no machine ever can. And that's kind of exciting, getting the raw detail. So at the end of the day, when we bring people into our studio, they see this chaotic, polyed room with this over here and that over there, and they're like, wow, behind the scenes is actually pretty cool because the end product is always so polished. How we see you in the trade shows, it's very well curated. Knowing people like you can be that guy who's just trying to figure things out, or that girl trying to figure things out, is very important because then they can relate to that. No one truly wants to buy another product from another company. They want to buy something from someone personally they know, because in that journey of experience of buying their stuff, they get to see a little bit of your world and the way you see the world. And in art, that is very true. And even other industries like fitness, why are you doing what you're doing? Like there's a reason why you're doing this by yourself, or you're part of this brand collective, or your theme is this, or the environment, the music you're playing in, the space you're in, the clothes that you're wearing. Like everything comes together to a story, whether you know it or not. It's so, I guess, secondary and primary as well. So branding is very, very important. This is something I always emphasize because it is a foundation. You don't have to know what it's going to be right away. Just keep on doing art, go to the trade shows, sell, do online. And as you figure it out, always ask, am I telling my story the best way I can? Is there a way for me to add more value than just a physical product or a service at the end of the day? Because anyone can buy art, anyone can go and get a coffee, but if that coffee means more because the company invests in other things, and now you feel happy that you're supporting this coffee company. It's all branding. It's very important. Always look at it. There's some great YouTube videos that you can find on personal branding for artists or any industry specifically. And if you start getting more successful in sales, you can look at how marketing in terms of hiring influencers and social media ads are opportunities, but that's a whole different conversation. The foundation for the beginners here. Go ahead.
I definitely want to mention for branding or building building a story behind what you do, or the ideas behind what you do, pick something that you are very passionate already about. You should really, really like whatever it is that you are focusing on. and you should really be passionate about it. If you're not passionate about it, if you feel disingenuous about it, it will be really hard to create a brand off of it. And sometimes the customers notice, sometimes they don't, but I would say that you're not going to feel as fulfilled as you could if you are doing something you're passionate about. You're going to feel very fulfilled doing that thing. If you're not as passionate about it, you might be able to still make money and still create a good brand, but it won't feel as fulfilling, which it's up to you whether or not that's important to you. But I think that being personally passionate about what you are doing and the art that you're doing, I think for me, it's very, very important to really feel that I'm doing something that I would like to see in the world myself. And it really goes back to, you know, finding your voice and finding that thing you want to do. And definitely for that kind of stuff, if you're looking at, like, when you're doing art commercially versus doing art for just personal enjoyment, sometimes the two align and sometimes the two don't. Sometimes when you're doing art for personal enjoyment, it's not something that hits a lot of people as commercially viable. And sometimes you need to consider, when you're being an entrepreneur in the arts, is what am I passionate about that a lot of other people are passionate about, or that is an underserved niche. So, you know, you have a few people who are passionate about it, but they're very passionate about it and no one is serving that niche. I find a lot of my when I'm focusing on art that we're doing, I usually relate it back to education, because my degree was in education, and my degree was in education because I really liked learning and teaching about things. And that was a huge passion of mine, even from a young age, which was funny. When I was in high school, I tended to be better at teaching people how to do the things that I was trying to do than I was personally even good at it. I would teach them how to be better than I was. So something that really I'm passionate about was teaching. And when we would do art, I would try and relate educational elements to it. So, like, you should be learning something. And art should make you feel, and it should make you learn. To me, it should be both. A lot of people would argue it only needs to make you feel. But to me, my personal passion is in both. And Kevin and I are both very passionate about birds and animals. So sometimes we will lean really heavily that direction in our art because we want to pursue things that we really enjoy or we really love, which happens to be a lot of animals and birds lately. But like, even with our recent public art that we did in Chinatown, that really came out of us already like loving Chinatowns. We had been to Chinatowns across Canada, and back in Regina, we didn't really have much of a Chinatown. It was only 2 streets, and it wasn't like a designated space like it is in Calgary. Yes, and fruits and vegetables trees. And that relates to our actually our adventures in Chinatown and our love of food. We absolutely love food. But we had been visiting Chinatowns across Canada and across the US, and we just really loved those spaces, and it was interesting to see the culture. And you know, Kevin could see some things from his childhood there, like getting congee, or like dishes that he would remember his family making, or things like that. So when we came to Calgary, we decided we really wanted to try to do something in Chinatown. We weren't even sure what, just something. Yeah. So we went to an event that was in Chinatown, and we just talked to people, and we're like, hey, like, well, actually, Kevin ended up going because I was too sick that day. This was pre-COVID, so I just was not feeling well. I didn't have COVID or anything, but Kevin ended up going, and he was just like, you know, we want to do something. We're artists. What can we do? Who can we talk to? And he just went to this event at the Cultural Center and was chatting with people, and ended up meeting the president of the Cultural Center. And he was like, well, you know, we want to do stuff too, so let's have a chat sometime and let's make a meeting. And so that's something where if you identify something that you're passionate about, so say you're passionate, you're passionate about Chinatowns, you're passionate about food, you're passionate about birds, think about ways that you can turn that into an art that hits something like a niche or something like a need. So like if you're really passionate about birds, maybe you're going to bird sanctuaries and you're talking to them about, doing some art for them, or maybe you're finding bird artists, or you're finding art galleries that carry birds or have bird in their name, or whatever it is, and just talk to those people and say, hey, I'm an artist, I want to make art and do art related to this. Here's some of what I've done. I drew this one thing, or I painted this one thing, but I have these ideas and I'd love to do these things, or something like that. And these conversations will lead you forwards. They'll lead you somewhere, not always necessarily where you thought you were going to go or what you thought you were going to make.
Yeah.
But it will lead you somewhere. And that's the important part. And the more you talk to people like this saying, oh, I'm an artist and I want to do this and I want to do that, the more they will talk to other people, because they'll talk to someone else and they'll be like, oh, I really need an artist. And they're like, oh yeah, that artist was talking to me the other day about wanting to do something. It's you just try and make these connections so that you can do things that are genuine, that you're really passionate about, and help in areas that you enjoy. And I think that's been, a large part of what we've been doing recently, has just been focusing on that kind of idea of approaching places where we really want to do stuff, or ideas that we're really passionate about, and moving forwards with that. And in the case of igNIGHT, it was food. We are both very, very passionate about food. We're big foodies. We can give you recommendations for where to eat in any city in Canada. But
when we go to Chinese grocery stores, we'll see this exotic fruit. And Jamie, we're gonna just buy it, and then we Google how to eat it, and we're eating the wrong part or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's just, we're in the hallway, it's all slimy and juicy. I'm like, oh my god, do we want to buy this? I don't know, $6 for a single fruit, but I don't know. Just check it off as now we know.
Yeah.
Right. Being curious.
Being experimental. I think those are all important things to be, especially when you're starting out and you want to, just try and get yourself out there. Like, say if you did a lot of art pieces and they were related to animals, and you approached a sanctuary and you're like, hey, can I do a gallery with you guys? They don't even need to have an actual gallery. They might be interested and be like, oh, we could dress up the office space for a bit and invite people in, and then they can come in and help support the sanctuary, and we'll have an art gallery that's beneficial for both of us. That's an example of something you could do that's relatively, that should be very low cost to no cost, make an impact, and you can also benefit each other. The sanctuary will have some followers, you'll have some followers, and it's just good for the community as well. I'm also very community minded. When I worked as a program coordinator for Regina Downtown Business Improvement District, I did a lot of at-risk programs for the community. I also, ran all the events and programming downtown, and worked with the city and worked with some art spaces and some art that we put up downtown. And also, this actually kind of segues into another area of art, grant writing, which can be really important, really daunting. So one of the things, definitely as a fine artist, or as an artist who wants to do public art, and who wants to work with the community, grant writing is super, super important. There are a lot of grants in Alberta, I have to say, compared to Saskatchewan, which has been great. But learn how to write grants. It's a really important skill. If you want a great educational opportunity for how to write a grant, adjudicate a grant. Volunteer yourself to be the juror for a grant, or go to free sessions. Sometimes they're paid, but you can find free sessions for how to write grants. But get any experience you can with grant work, get any experience you can with city permits, working with the city. What are city expectations? And insurance, that's a big one. But for if you want to do any kind of like public art or art involving like community activities or grant activities, you really want to know how to write grants and how to work with a community, and building a relationship with, like a nonprofit or a if you made really good friends with that bird sanctuary, maybe you can write a grant about doing art at the bird sanctuary. Like it's stuff like that that can really help you move along, and trying to get smaller grants under your belt first before bigger grants is a great idea. Getting big grants is very difficult. You need to have a lot behind your name and a lot of experience and a lot of big names backing you to get the larger grants. Not to say that you shouldn't try. I always think, if you don't put your hat in the ring, then of course they won't pick you. At least throw your hat in the ring if you're prepared and ready to do so. But smaller grants, trying to do smaller public art and getting that out there first to build that portfolio can be really, really important and help you secure larger pieces later. And that's one of the building blocks for doing art. And for our sculptures for igNIGHT, actually, it was really, really helpful to have used Fuse 33 out of Calgary. They're a makerspace, kind of an industrial makerspace with a lot of very educated people there and how to use the tools and how to do large scale art. And they helped us a lot when we were building the sculptures, because we had ideas, we knew we knew an idea of how to build the sculptures, and they definitely improved upon that idea. So we had a basic idea of how to build the sculptures, and then they were like, well, what if we did this instead to make it stronger? Or what if we did this instead with this material? Or what if you used, or like when one of the acrylics accidentally broke, they taught us there was a thing that can fuse acrylics back together that melts it into itself, that creates a structural integrity. And we were like, oh, that's fantastic. We don't have to just cut an entirely new piece of acrylic, which would have cost hundreds of dollars. So definitely find people who you can ask questions to, who you can move forward with, who are in your field, and use that to help improve. And not every artist is going to be open to answering questions. Sometimes they'll have their trade secrets and they don't want to tell you. Like things like making pens is a big one. A lot of artists do not want to tell other artists where they make pens, because if too many artists make pens there, the price goes up, or it becomes difficult to get the shipments, which is, a merchandising issue for them. So some things are a little bit more private, and some people will hold their cards close to their chest, but I would not be afraid to ask. Just ask respectfully, and if the answer is no, I won't tell you trade secrets about my art. That's fine. There's also YouTube. YouTube and TikTok have a lot of trade secrets that artists are giving out now, because they shouldn't be trade secrets. They should be, things for us to learn how to do. In some cases, if someone wants to keep something close to their chest, that's totally fine. That's fair, totally up to them. But there are ways to learn and people to learn from, and finding them might be a bit difficult in the beginning. But again, network with people in your field, network with people adjacent to your field, and try and find your passion and find what you really want to make. And if you keep pursuing that, I think that you'll find your voice and you'll find yourself in art.
Yeah, you'll definitely find yourself opportunities in that respect. So Jamie talked a lot about the grant writing side of things and how to apply successfully. I'm going to delve a little bit into the portfolio side of things. So you need to have works prior to show the adjudicators that you can do a project of that scale if we're doing public art. So one of the easiest ways of doing it, if you've developed relationships with anyone who rents or owns a building and has a business, can I paint a mural inside? Can I paint a mural outside? Ask those questions. Do it for cheap. Just have one under your belt, like we did when we went to Niagara Falls. A Other opportunities are there's usually bench painting programs. Can you submit art for this garbage can or this electrical box in my neighborhood? Those always exist in the larger cities or smaller cities. Like anything that's considered public and you can do art on is the first step. And it's such a foreign concept for most people in Comic Cons or artist alleys, because how would you ever do that? Like, I'm only used to what I know. It's scary. It's a lot of logistics. It doesn't pay as well. That's all secondary to the opportunity to do it at all. Again, it allows you to see, do I enjoy this? Is it fun? Do I see potential in my artistic practice evolving as I do more of this? For us, we found public art to be a stronger way for us to communicate to people passively as they're going about their everyday. They walk by this beautiful art piece. It gives an opportunity to encourage dialogue on subject matters that we can't usually capture with one single canvas, or are subject matters that aren't appropriate in the likes of Comic Cons or art fairs. For example, one of the major projects we're working on with Chinatown, almost every single organization there is a giant mural about the Qingming scroll, a very important Chinese historical art piece. We're getting a lot of feedback from the elders in that community, a lot of researchers who looked into it, and together we're kind of working on that. Now, that doesn't make sense if we're trying to sell a product off of it, but it makes so much sense if we're trying to showcase one of the leading Chinatowns in Canada and what that means as a Canadian Chinese artist to be in that space. So you're finding your voice. And again, branding helps a lot, because in that discovery process and why you're doing what you're doing, you're going to find what that means. And you're going to find a way to share that vision in other topics outside of Pokemon or video games or whatever you're already doing art in. And by then, it's no longer you're just a person who does art of cartoon characters. It's something more. You're going to be able to find a voice for that. And that's when the opportunities come in. It's very scary because outside of our comfort zone. It's all we knew 5 years ago, but then COVID taught us, okay, if there's no trade shows, let's do what we always talked about. Let's look at an opportunity to do some public art, to do some fun things. Let's get out there and meet people so that we can do other things as well.
I'm going to actually
if you look,
talk about grants and where to find them, because I noticed there's a lot of questions in the side. So there are a lot of places that grants are, and I do not have one collective resource that I get them from currently. I don't know if that exists. That probably exists. If anyone figures that out, please send me that information. But usually I will look at a few things. I'll look at federal grants, provincial grants, city grants. So if I'm looking at those three things, and then you might need to additionally Google something like grants in my area, like grants in Calgary, things like that. Yeah, so Calgary Arts Development is a city grant, so that's the organization that's working with the city of Calgary to run their art programs now. So that's a great one. Edmonton Arts Council, or if you're well, I'd say also alongside looking at these three resources, the federal one is fairly consistent. So you should be able to see when grants are due a few years in advance and, know some more information about it. The provincial and city ones might change year to year. But one of the big things that I do too is I follow a lot of places that I know of that would post these grants. So, arts organizations. I follow like city news. I have newsletters that I sign up for, every newsletter that's related to a grant. Like we use Akimbo a lot for art calls. Some art calls go on Akimbo. Occasionally, I will just Google "call for artists Calgary" just to see, because not everything goes on Akimbo. So sometimes you just Google it and something pops up, and you're like, oh, well, that wasn't anywhere else. And definitely, it also would come back to like the networking and talking with people, because the more people you have who are also looking for grants or actively looking for submissions, the better chance you have of catching things that are popping up. So that's my current method for finding funding or finding opportunities. Also, Canada Council for the Arts is a big one. So they have funding opportunities year-round that you can apply to, but you have to first validate a profile on Canada Council for the Arts. So you'll have to, create an artist resume and submit that to them and your qualifications, and then they will decide whether or not you can have a profile. And if you don't meet their qualifications yet, you might have to do a few more things. I can't remember exactly what the qualifications were. Something like
gallery representation.
Well, it was a few gallery shows, like you've shown in galleries or art things run by art people. I can't remember what exactly it was. They have it listed on the website, but definitely check out Canada Council for the Arts because they have year-round grants you can apply for, and it's made for Canadian artists specifically. So take a look at it. Make sure you're just aware that it exists. Try to validate a profile. If they reject you, you can try again. You just
we got rejected enough times.
Yeah, we were rejected for our collective because I have to change the way that I represented it on paper. But now we're both validated personally as artists. So I just have to change the way I do the collective paperwork. Also, one thing with business to note, it's going to be a lot of paperwork. So if you're starting an official business, yes, so Canada Council does have that emerging artist category. I'm not sure if it's still live. I think it was live until April this year. And then they were going to do something to change it. So I'm not sure what that's looking like right now. But definitely if it's still active, I would apply to that and get yourself as an emerging artist because the qualifications are lower. So you can, get your foot in the door in that funding, and you'll have some funding available to apply to, and you can, start doing that. And it's always the more grants you can write, the better, because you'll just get more experience, you'll just get more knowledgeable. Yep. Oh, okay. Awesome. Thank you, Teresa. So she's posted some regional municipality of Wood Buffalo social support and grant services. So if you check out that link, I'm sure it'll have lots of awesome stuff in it. But yeah, so when you're starting out with running an actual business, so say you've started making enough money that you need to actually turn your business into a real business, you're going to need to be saving all your receipts. You're going to have to do bookkeeping. When you're a full-time artist as well, it becomes even more complicated because you're submitting, your revenues being made through art. And so you're not just conveniently getting a T4, you have to actually make your own, submit it. So we actually have a bookkeeper and an accountant, just because neither of us are particularly good in that area, and it's expensive. But it is what it is, right? Like sometimes if you want to have enough time to actually make the art, you have to outsource some of the other things, like bookkeeping.
Yeah. Well, thank you, JVP. So I'll open up the floor for questions now. And this is an opportunity to ask anything. And let's go hyper-focus on anything that you maybe are having issues with, you're curious about exploring yourself in your practice or your entrepreneurship areas. So I think how we're going to do that is there is a raise your hand option. And then once you raise your hand, the moderator can give you the floor and we can just have a dialogue that way. A great place to start is telling us a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, and we can go from there.
Also, you can feel free to message us on our Facebook or Instagram if you want to, if you think of a question you have later, you can just message us privately, or if you don't feel comfortable asking here, you're a little bit shy, don't worry about it. You know, we do reply, both of us will see the message, one of us will reply usually. So if you feel like asking anything on there, no worries. Oh, there is a hand up.
Marissa Mars.
Can you guys hear
Marissa.
me?
Yes.
Hi. Cool.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Just wanted to say thank you guys for opening up a platform like this to talk about art. I've been looking to connect with a lot of artists. Like I'm a painter. I've been painting for over 10 years, close to 15 years. And I live in Edmonton, Alberta. I lived in Vancouver for a bit as well. And just seeing the difference in the art scenes between the two cities, I was like, this needs to change. So I'm on a journey myself to connect with other artists and just do kind of what you're doing right now, where you're just opening up the floor to emerging artists and allowing them to see into your world and the journey that you went on to that. So I guess just like a simple question I just wanted to ask, how long did it take you guys to get from we're just going to start painting to where you are right now? And I know you really talked about the journey, but maybe just some people just need numbers and tangible years. Like for me, it's been over 10, 15 years, and I'm everywhere. I do everything. Like I have big paintings behind me. I don't know if you can see.
I've been seeing that, yeah.
It's a 60-inch painting, and then I have other little tiny things on the side over here that I'm working on for shows. So maybe, I don't know, expand more on that little part of your journey.
Okay, Jamie?
So I would say a lot of this began with definitely Kevin's formal education in the arts. So I'd say that really was important to beginning where we started from. So, but I'm not going to count that in the years from when we started painting. But I would say it laid him being in his formal education and me being self-taught and having the knowledge that I do about public art and things like that definitely helped us in a lot of ways. And he had the business and marketing and all of that stuff like that. So we definitely had a lot of the relevant skill sets kind of built at a baseline by the time we were starting. So when we started painting, I think it was 6 years ago or 7, was when we really, like, the whole Rawry and Pohly journey started. So
evolved from multiple nerdgasms to something a little more serious, where we were seriously looking at what is it, why are we doing it, what are we trying to say with our art? Are we just painting cartoon characters, or is there a reason why we're so passionate about this? And identifying it was a sense of, okay, who are we as people? Who are we as artists? Who are as people? Why is there a teddy bear? That's different, right? Maybe there's a story there. Why do we like video games so much? Maybe there's a passion there. Wow.
I would say that the length of time that we've been doing art and our relative success has in a lot of ways been very influenced by the fact that there is 2 of us. We both have very different skill sets that complement each other. And we were even kind of a surprise in the Artist Alley community that we're part of for how quickly we accelerated. So I think a lot of what we did was very fast. And I wouldn't say it was, it was all skill. With art, everything's a little bit of luck too, like you never know what's going to succeed, and what succeeds right now might not succeed next week or might have succeeded in a year. Sometimes it's really surprising what is actually going to pick up. So some of that was luck, but I'm going to say a lot of our base skill sets really helped us to launch forward with that after we started. And just like the style that we started with has evolved over time, but people, they really liked it in the beginning as well. So I think that finding that was a lot of like luck, and just over time seeing things that you liked and doing things that you liked, and eventually that culminated into something. But in actual time, years of when did we start doing these kind of paintings, it was 6 years.
Cheers.
Yeah, and the actual 2015. 6 years. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
6 years ago we started officially.
Yeah.
But again, like Jamie mentioned, a very important point here. That 6 years was because we're two people, and we have such a unique skill set that allows us to move fast. We approach every decision from not only an artist perspective, but a business perspective. It's just the way our minds have been wired.
And I have
for
a
a long
degree
time.
in English, and in my
It's like we're
job
cheating right now.
yeah, in my job previously, I was very interested in grant writing. I love grant writing personally. I actually really love writing grants. Like, they excite me. I think they're super fun. I love the technical writing of it. Like, that's not normal, I have discovered over time. People have told me this many times. This is not a normal thing to enjoy, but I really, really like it. And I really like paperwork. So for a lot of artists, paperwork is not the fun thing about being an artist, for sure.
Find your Jamie.
No, I do not have time. I can
find someone else who is
feedback,
like
though.
Jamie. Yeah.
Yeah, like if you are looking to write grants and you're interested in doing that kind of thing and you're totally inexperienced, you'd like some knowledge, message me. I can give you feedback and I can help you out with writing grants. Like, I can't write the grant for you. I just don't have time to do that. But I can definitely like point you in right directions or help you address how you might, you see a grant, you're like, what could I do with this? I can give you some base ideas as well. So if you're looking at trying it for the first time, definitely message me.
You mentioned you're from Vancouver. If you
But
do
she's
have
not-
any, yeah, I know, but she's from Vancouver. Vancouver is interesting in the sense that the art museum there, the Vancouver Museum of Art, had a rental program where local artists could drop off artwork if they were selected by the department, and then they would rent your art to interested collectors, and it was a great way to expose yourself. I haven't seen that system in Calgary yet, but I saw it in Victoria, British Columbia. And so if you're looking, go to these art places of prestige and ask, do you have an art rental program? It might be something of interest for you to allow other collectors to engage with your art without buying the canvas outright if it's a higher price point. So now we're thinking about what happens if it gets damaged or the insurance. I found the easiest way to look at it is be okay with the fact that it could get damaged and destroyed. And that's just a cost as you're starting out. Don't let the idea of the one piece you did defining your entire practice. Know that it's just one step in your journey. So you have to be okay with stumbling here if that gets damaged. And it allows people to be more comfortable in acquiring your art and living with it, which is a big part, or displaying it in an office building with no risk of them. So it's just a matter of, I really want people to see my art and experience it. If I can make a little bit of money on the side so I can keep on doing it, all the better. So that's a really good idea. Representation in gallery usually means you're giving up 40 to 50 or even 60% of the end price, but they will work with you to develop your brand. They will work with you and say, hey, they will build your presence amongst their collectors, and that 50%, even though it seems like a lot, is worth it given the effort they do. But sometimes they request that they have exclusive distribution rights, which means you cannot sell online or off to the side. And if you do, a percentage of sales still goes to the gallery. Everyone works a little bit differently. There are some places that don't take any percentage of sales, but 10%. But they're not building your brand. They're not representing you, the artist. They just, here's their art. If you want it, you can get it, and that's it. Whereas a gallery is more intimate and they're more, I guess, more.
Well, and it'll largely depend on the gallery and it'll depend on the people there. And I definitely, when you're looking at things like gallery representation, you want to make sure that you feel really good about working with who you're working with. Always make sure that they're the kind of person you would want to buy art from, or they're the kind of person that you like. Because working with people in business can be very difficult and very stressful, and you want to make sure you have everything. You should at least be starting happy. Actually, that relates to a note that I had that I forgot to say earlier. But if you are ever getting contracts, you can always negotiate contracts. So if you get a contract and you see stuff in there you don't like, you tell them to take it out. Like, you bring that up with them and you're like, no, not this, or this, the way this is worded is not making me feel comfortable. We need to fix that.
It's too vague. Yeah.
Yeah. Or like, you know, they're taking away, they're saying, I want exclusive this. You have to have a conversation with them about, do you really need that? I don't want you to have that. Can we renegotiate that? And you know, if they're a no, then you might have to walk away from that contract. It's better to have renegotiated a bad contract and say no than to sign a bad contract. And sometimes they'll say to you like, well, all the other artists signed it. Well, too bad. I'm not all the other artists. I'm bringing
We've
up
done this actually.
I'm bringing up my problem specifically, and I'm talking to you about it. And you can change the contract for me. So just know you're never stuck with a contract, and they're never stuck with a specific contract. They can change it for you, but don't sign bad contracts if you can avoid it.
If you can't understand the language, find someone that can break it down to you so you know what you're getting into. Too often I find artists are quick to sign a contract because it's their first job or it's a lucrative idea project, but now they're for life committed to that, what that could mean. And that's a scary thought, right? Contracts are legally binding, and you have to understand if you're signing something, you need to know exactly what you're getting into. A lot of organizations aren't trying to take advantage of artists, but they're proposing contracts that are blanket statements which cover all their bases. Now you have to consider your bases as well. And in that discussion of renegotiation, you're going to find a common middle ground. No one's asking for too much. And then they say, okay, yeah, this doesn't make sense for your specific instance to have this clause in the contract. So let's just get rid of it so you don't have to worry about it. And it's always nice to have those kind of conversations with those people. And if you can have those conversations, then you know it's the beginning of a good relationship.
I'm sorry, we are definitely talkers. This is a very long answer.
Yeah.
Did you have any more questions, or did anyone else have any more questions? Sorry about that.
No? Okay.
Did we adequately answer your question, Marissa?
Yeah, it was definitely helpful.
Okay, good.
Your guys' conversation back and forth is definitely helpful in other areas as well. You're answering questions as I'm thinking about them. So thank you.
Yeah. And again, if you guys have any other questions that you come up later on, just DM us on Facebook or Instagram and say, hey, I saw your talk. What about this? How do you guys approach this? Or what did you do when this happened? And if we've experienced it or we have insight, we'll definitely share it with you guys. Okay, well, I think that wraps it up. Teresa, do you have any other housekeeping things to say?
Other than that, was an incredible discussion. Thank you so much for having that thorough discussion and that exchange of ideas. And Marissa's right, the conversation between the two of you, and you dug into so many different elements of the business of the arts, including granting, production, a little bit on contracts, which is always interesting from my world. So I hope everybody found this really interesting. I know I did, and from the bottom of the igNIGHT heart, we thank you for participating in this and also delivering an incredible artist session. Don't forget to check all of our pre-recorded sessions or recorded sessions at rmwb.ca/ignight. They're also available on YouTube following this session. So you guys are now fully celebrities on YouTube.
Hey.
And for those of you living in the region, igNIGHT is still happening until October the 10th. So be sure to come down and check out the beautiful artworks. They are lit up from 5:30 until 10:30 p.m. And that would about wrap it up for us. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thanks again so much, you guys. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.